Michael, you're looking for a motion. Just raise your hand.
Okay, so good morning, everyone, and welcome to Political Liaison of September 26th. I'm going to first begin with identifying of any media on the line. I know we've already said good morning to Linda Paulus at the Turtle Island, as well as Donna Durek for the Two-Row Times. So recognizing both of those entities. Number two is any changes, additions, or deletions to the agenda. Okay, seeing or hearing none, then I will look to a motion to adopt the agenda. Oh, sorry, question. Okay.
Recording in progress.
Okay. Sorry, if I could just confirm with Darren in relation to the palliative care presentation. I know you had met with the team that were supposed to be on this agenda. Are they scheduled for another meeting? If you could just confirm, Darren.
Yeah, their presentation is complete, but it's not in a state of readiness for presentation, but it is complete. We will share it with council in advance of the next meeting. That way you have an opportunity to see it.
The next meeting it'll be on.
It is ready, but it's not ready for presentation.
So it'll be shared with full council prior to the next meeting. Okay, is there anything further? There were some questions on some ethics on the agenda process. I'm sure that will be raised once we get to that item. Therefore, I'll look to a motion and seconder to adopt the political liaison agenda of September 26th.
I'll move.
Moved by Carrie, second by Audrey. Are there any further questions or comments? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion is carried. Okay, so we do have our verbal update from our political analyst, Jill Hill, in regards to the Conjuqua structure. This is again part of our 8-week trial. So with that being said, I'll pass the floor right over to yourself, Jill.
Good morning. I just wanted to give a brief update. We've been in the study period for about 2.5 weeks now. And I just wanted to lay out a few key pieces for council. One is in the area of communications, just to update the council. that the Gundrikwa structure has been shared with the community on September 13th. It was shared via Facebook, and then it was shared via all staff of Six Nations Council. And the reason this was done is because we had technical challenges, and we weren't able to share it on our website at that time. But it was shared on our website on September 19th. That's when it was shared on the website. So we were able to do that. Both Two Row Times and Turtle Island News requested information on what we are doing, and we also sent the communication to both media outlets upon their request, and that was sent on September 13th, I believe. In the Facebook chat, there has been some comments and some community feedback about the Gundrikwa structure. We are in the process of formulating responses to these questions, and that will be coming, that is forthcoming. So that's what's happening with the community communications update. We're also, the other piece for the Gundrikwa structure is the transition agenda review team, because that is a new component of this preliminary period. And I thought I'd just give some information on how that is going. So if you remember correctly, it's a two-tiered process. So this is more administrative, but it's a two-tiered process, and the transition agenda review team sees the agenda items and what was at the time committee items that would have went to committee before it goes to the agenda review team. So that transition agenda review team is a first eye on any materials that are coming, and previously they would have come through committee to look at the material and determine what to do and how to move through the structure so that this table, the council, gets information in quicker for political advocacy purposes. There's a number of things happening at that table that are more administrative in nature that will help to streamline these processes. And one of them is changes to the briefing note. One of them is administrative updates. And so all of those are in play right now as we go through the preliminary period. So that's ongoing. And actually, it's quite interesting to see the changes that are being made, because I think they will increase the efficiencies of the organization to be able to bring items to the Six Nations elected council in a more timely manner and not be held up. The other area that I want to just remind everyone is that there'll be feedback sessions. And because next week, late next week, we'll be at kind of the midway point of this preliminary study period. So I'll be reaching out, and the team will be reaching out to each of the counselors, as well as senior administration who are involved in this process for feedback to date. So I'll be reaching out, and the team will be reaching out later today or early tomorrow. And one of the formats we're using is survey, and the other format we'll be using is one-on-one. And part of this is designed to just get feedback on how you believe it's going from your process. I know we're pretty, it's pretty tight here. Like, it's not a long time, really. We've only been in this process for 3 weeks. So it might be a little more difficult to give feedback, but that's part of the process because we only have 8 weeks in this. So, you know, all feedback is appreciated. We're trying to make this as positive for our community to get information where it needs to go in a more timely manner. So that will be, I'll be reaching out to you, or the team will be reaching out to you either later today or tomorrow. And there's a two-part, it's a survey as well as one-to-one sessions to speak about what is happening a little more. The third thing I just wanted to update the table on is just a gentle reminder that because the preliminary study period ends on October 31st, this table has, I understand it, already been sent a meeting invite for an October 31st meeting to determine next steps from this preliminary study period. So just a gentle reminder that that meeting invitation has already went out, so that this table can make a determination about how they want to move forward. So I should just back up one piece, and that's when I complete the survey and the team completes the preliminary study period survey, there'll be a midterm report that will come out, and that will be later next week that's when it's that's our target date. So that's when we'll be doing like a preliminary midterm report about how things are going through this preliminary study period, and that will be shared at that time. The second thing is that on the October 31st date, draft of the final report will be completed, so that will be presented to council at that time, again, so that council can make decision about how they want to proceed with the Gunjukwa structure and whether they believe it's in the best interest of the community to do so. So that's just an update on what has happened since we started the Gunjukwa preliminary study period. And just to keep you updated, we just wanted to let you know. So that's it, Chief.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much, Jill, for providing your verbal update. And again, just in terms of, the political advocacy pieces, which is basically part of the efficiency piece that we're looking at to help further streamline items and as well get to the further political advocacy needs that different issues may need. Looking to any further questions or comments? Hazel.
I have a comment that it was very good.
Sorry, we are having some technical difficulties as we're still maneuvering through this hybrid model of having counselors and ourselves back in the chambers, with some still utilizing Zoom as well. So please bear with us as some of our counselors are having some issues with hearing some of the presentation. So it was basically just a verbal 2.5 week update, Hazel, just on the Gunjukwa structure itself. Is there any further questions or comments, Melba?
Yes.
Does that mean that our community cannot hear if we could not hear Jill very well?
No, they can hear.
So they hear better than us.
We're live at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, is there any further questions or comments in relation to Jill's verbal update of Gunjukwa? Okay, seeing or hearing none, then I'll look to mover and seconder to accept Jill's verbal update. Moved by Michelle, seconder. Second by Greg. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion is carried. I'm going to move right through the agenda here. We have no delegations or presentations on this agenda, so that'll lead us right into the adoption of the liaison minutes of September 12th. Are there any questions, comments? Looking to a mover and seconder if there's no questions or comments.
I'll move, Nathan.
Okay, it's moved by Nathan to adopt the minutes. Is there a seconder? Second by Michelle. Sorry, it's hard to see with the glare. Are there any further questions or comments? It's been moved and seconded. Seeing or hearing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion is carried. The next recommendation on our agenda comes from the Emergency Control Group, which we have our chair in the room. I'm going to ask if Mike, if you can join me up front here, just to maybe speak to the background of this, and then we'll get into the further discussion points. But I just want to come around. Sorry. Just a little bit easier to come this way. So I'm going to grab that chair, Mike, and then just to give a background to the recommendation.
Kind of intimidating being a big chair. Though. Okay,
You're good to go.
Okay. So good morning, everybody. My name is Michael Montour. I am the Emergency Operations Center Commander, and we have a recommendation from our Emergency Control Group, mainly led and from our Health and Oswego Public Health departments. So there's a wastewater surveillance opportunity through the University of Waterloo, and it's funded through the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks. And the opportunity is that they would want to sample the wastewater coming from the Oswego area and send that into the University of Waterloo. University of Waterloo would then analyze it for COVID-19 fragments and be able to determine what strain of COVID-19 is circulating within the village here, and provide a report back to our health and Oswego public health departments, and be a resource for them as we look to have data, and so that we can make informed good strategies and how to best recommend to council, steps forward in mitigating any kind of virus spread and containment. So this part of this is needed because we don't have access to a lot of the data that we did, let's say a year ago when people were having PCR tests done and those types of things. So they've shifted to a report on your own structure for rapid tests, and their health and Michigan Public Health are advising that there's, they're concerned that there's significant underreporting, and also, we don't have the data on what strain of virus is circulating within the community. And we're just looking for this to be another tool in our tool belt as we shift into the next phase of the pandemic. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mike, for providing that background. So there is a recommendation on the agenda, and I too, just as you were talking the points in relation to the research part, I wondered on the process of ethics at which Councillor Michelle had brought forward. So we'll look to that in terms of the emergency control group's role. Audrey has a question, and then over to Michelle.
How about now? Yeah, Mike, I wanted to know how they analyze to find out the strength of strains that are on Six Nations and the water. So what do they do? How do they determine that? And also, I'm prepared to move on your motion as well.
We have a representative of the University of Waterloo, Mark Servos. He can speak to that, the actual process. Mark?
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes. Essentially, when you get the virus, it goes into your nose and you swallow that and you excrete that into the toilet. It goes down through the pipes. And as they're pumping it into the lagoon at Ashwegan, we're able to take a sample from there and we extract it, and we have to clean it up because you can imagine it's a fairly dirty sample. And then we use essentially the same methods that they would have used when you were doing your PCR test. It's just slight variations of it. And we're able to do different PCR tests to be able to determine exactly which strain of the virus we have. So it's not active virus, it's little pieces of the virus that have broken down, and we're able to detect that just like we would if we were taking a swab from your nose. Does that help?
Okay, thank you, Mark, for your response. I'm going to look over to Michelle.
Okay, so I thought this came to ethics last year and was denied. So I'm kind of unsure of why then it's rerouted through ECG, because I thought it was to be ended by September. So if the collection has been done, then it's a post-approval, really, because the work was done regardless of what the decision was. But then my next question is, It's only for a subsection of the community, correct? Because we all the waste doesn't go into one lagoon. So we're only capturing what the trail is doing, correct? Not the whole community. It's by far from the whole community.
Okay, thanks. Michelle, back over to you, Mike.
So we haven't done any testing. This is just for permission to do so. In regards to, I guess, the route, it was a recommendation from Zach Miller had noted that this may be the more appropriate route for this, as our health and Michigan Public Health wanted as part of our pandemic response. And the nature of it wasn't necessarily a research project, but just another tool to give us the data. Sorry, I lost your last question.
It's a subsection of stations, it's not.
Yeah, that's correct. So it's just the main village area. So, but I know, doing it from the lens of, and I know we have some others online as well. I think Sarah Curley Smith and Linda Bomberry, I believe, should be online. They can speak to more how they wanted to do it, but I know that they want anything and everything right now just to provide them with that information so they can assist. So basically right now we don't have any data we're thinking. So we're wanting a tool at least as we move into the next phase. Thanks.
Okay, I just really quickly, I have Greg in queue next for question or comment, but before that, maybe I'll go to Sarah.
Thank you. Just to kind of clarify Mike's point around research, we saw it more as a surveillance tool than a research project. So it's similar to how we offer rapid testing or molecular testing, PCR testing. It's not, it's a tool to monitor COVID-19 in the community. It's not a research project that has a beginning point and an end point, and then we've got we're trying to investigate new research. It's just a surveillance tool, like Mike said, a tool in our tool belt. And in terms of it being a subsample of community, it doesn't capture the entire community, because we do know not everyone is on the water line, but that is similar to other municipalities. Other municipalities use their wastewater surveillance. Not everyone is on that line either. So it's thought of as a sample. And right now, in terms of how many tests we're getting back or how many tests are getting reported, it's a very, very small sample. Probably sometimes we have less than 5 tests per week coming into the Michigan Public Health. So that is a much smaller portion of a sample. So like we're saying, it's just kind of another tool for us to use to monitor how the virus is circulating.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Sarah, for further clarifying on those points. I do have Greg in queue next for a comment or question.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Oh, sure. I just had one question about it being such a small sample. Is there a way that you can extrapolate from the concentration of the fragments in the water compared to the population that the water is servicing, and then extrapolate that to the population of the reserve?
Is that a question to me?
Yes, I believe so, Mark.
Okay. Yeah, I would say think of it as a sentinel. What we've found, so we currently monitor in Waterloo, York region, Peel region, and with support of Ministry of the Environment. It would be a sentinel, so it would give you a very strong idea of what's happening in the community, but it won't give you absolutely everything because it's such a dispersed community here. It is quite different. So it would, won't capture everything, but if there is another wave or there is a shift in the kinds of variants that are entering the community, then public health would have a very early, very strong indication of how that is shifting. And that's how the other public health units that we work with have been using the information. particularly in terms of variants of concern, because currently there's no way, and there's such little data available from testing to be able to use that to get a good idea of what's happening in the community.
So
I point out too that this is not research. We see this as service. We're doing it for other communities. And when people approached us, we volunteered to do this for Ashwegan community as well.
Oh, so the only way you could accurately assess the incidence of the disease would be through testing every water cistern or well that supplies the household. That's what you're saying.
It's not. We're not testing water. We're testing wastewater, right? We're not testing drinking water. Yeah. So it would, and that would just not be practical. So the idea is that you have a sentinel group. I mean, it's sampling maybe a few, hundreds of sample or people per day. We would sample typically 3 samples per week, and then we kind of integrate that sample to get an idea of what the trends are. In other communities, we've seen extremely close relationship between the signal we see in the wastewater and the signal that we see in the community. These, of course, are larger communities, but the correlations are very, very close, and we get early detection that's coming into the community in the wastewater samples. But probably by at least a few days or a week, we could detect it. So for example, the Omicron variant, we detected very early as it was entering into Ontario. But the answer is basically, we would not be able to do all of the different places, and the people who bring the septic into the pumping station, they probably won't get a strong signal from them because it's in the septic system and the virus degrades. So we would only be that community that goes into the pumping station.
Thank you, Mark, for your responses to Greg's questions. I have Nathan in queue next.
Thanks, Chief. And I don't have concerns per se with the tool being used because I think that the data needs to drive our responses. I am a little concerned with the sample size going forward. But the point I want to kind of make is either way you look at it, whether it's research or surveillance, what we're doing is pretty evasive in terms of pulling the information out if there isn't a good, firm understanding in the community. So if this motion passes, my hope is that we do a pretty intensive communication out to the community about what we're collecting. And even if it is kind of technical, I think it's important that we be honest with the community of this surveillance, the potential kind of evasiveness of it, and what actually we are collecting, and then how we're using that as a tool to inform decisions. So I'm even hesitant probably to move a second reading of this, only because I want some of that work done before we totally execute this. So just my comments from here. I don't have an issue with how we're using this as a tool, but it's more that process and ensuring community has a full understanding.
I think that's great points, Nathan. Thank you for that. And we could perhaps maybe come back to a response from either maybe Sarah or Mike in terms of that communication plan as laid out from Nathan's comments. I do have Sherry Lynn who has her hand up next.
I guess a couple of things in the sense of, he talked about working with public health. So what has our public health have said about it? But also too, if you do find something, how are you going to help us? Or what are you going to do for us if you do find something?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Sherry Lynn. I believe Linda is on the line from Public Health. I don't see Sorry, just want to confirm, is there anyone on the line, representative from Public Health? Okay, my apologies, Sherry Lynn, as I'm not seeing anyone on the line from Public Health. Is there any, maybe Sarah, perhaps, did you want to take an attempt at response to that question?
Sure. As an example, let's say a variant, we don't know what's going to happen with the pandemic. So as an example, a variant comes into Ontario. They suspect that it's more severe, could transmit more, could be more hospitalizations. So if in this wastewater surveillance, it's identified Six Nations has this variant in community, then what we can do is communicate to the community, hey, this variant of concern that has been identified in Ontario is now within Six Nations. We recommend that right now the community is high risk, so we recommend that if you're a vulnerable population, that you stay home. Ensure that if you're in public settings, we recommend that you wear a mask, get tested if you're sick, try to prevent like the messaging that we've been saying all along. So it's like risk-informed decision making. So we let community know that we're in a higher risk because we have this variant of concern that is more easily spread. It's causing more severe illness. And here are some things you can do to keep yourself safe, to keep your loved ones safe. So that's an example of how this could help us, because as Mark said, that it's kind of an early warning that this could be starting to spread in the community. So what we want to do is identify that we're at a higher risk. These are the things that you can do to keep yourself safe. And that's kind of the way I see this tool being used.
Okay, thank you, Sarah, for your response to that. Unfortunately, we'll have hopefully our Public Health as well on the line for future discussions to this matter in relation to even the communicate part of which Nathan has suggested. I see Helen had her hand raised. You just got to go off of mute, Helen.
Something going on with my thing. I can't turn it. Hear me?
Not yet. Sorry, just 1 second.
Can you hear me on this speaker? Can you hear me on something else? I don't know what the rest of you, I'm having an awful time, but I can't hear nothing. I can't understand what Jill said. I can't understand what Mike and those other people are saying.
We hear you.
I catch the words.
Yeah, we're trying our very best to get this.
My question is, in reading the helping our people reconnect with agriculture and all, isn't that what the farmers proposal was going to do? They submitted last, sort of.
Sorry, Helen, which one are you referring to? You're on the wrong motion. We're on the wastewater surveillance opportunity. Yes.
I had to get a paper one because I couldn't bring it up on.
Do apologize as we are. No problem. Okay, is there any further questions or comments in relation to the wastewater surveillance? I do apologize again. We are having some technical difficulties as we get through our hybrid model here in terms of our Zoom and in person. So we will be working out the kinks to this. Is there any further question or comment? Michelle.
I'm just confused on the
Process, yeah. So Michelle's question was basically in relation to process. Again, and I think through Mike's and Sarah's comments that they had felt that this would be the better route to take through the ECG, but not sure if you want to communicate back in relation to Mark's first visit at ethics and why it was originally denied.
I wasn't aware that it was denied, but I do know, again, Zach had put it into context that this, if we're using it as a surveillance tool, not a research project, this is the more appropriate way for it to go. So, if we undertook the wrong process, my apologies. I just wasn't aware. I knew that it was on the table. I wasn't sure of the status. And then again, it was requested from. I'm just here advocating on behalf of health and Oswego Public Health, because they're the ones that reached it back out to Mark and asked him to come and present to the emergency control group.
And that's my concern, right? Because public health doesn't fall under us.
It's federal.
So this is where it's getting tricky, is why are we approving something for public health? We shouldn't.
Yeah, well, again, it's still in relation to our overall community. I think we've always had that issue with federal public health in throughout, and it's actually been highlighted even more so during the pandemic of really the gaps and challenges that we have with public health. But I think in regards to this specific surveillance of tapping into our wastewater and those pieces, we have to be a part of that decision. Further question, comment? I see Nathan on the line and then over to Audrey. Nathan, you have the floor.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of, not to reopen that last discussion, but it was actually council that made the decision not to move forward last year. It wasn't ethics. Ethics pushed it through to council. Council said no. The reason why it was a no, it was because the collection of biomass without the comms plan was seen as a little evasive for communities. So that's why I made the point. Let's put a comms plan to this, because that was the concern last time.
I do appreciate that that background, Nathan, a recollection. Audrey?
Yes, I think that what Sarah in the group is recommending, I think it is really sound to basically make informed decisions on risk management. And I think that's what we need to do. We need to identify these new variants that are on Six Nations. And if they're here, then we have to inform our community how to protect themselves and safeguard against it. And to have early warning signs of it so that we can help save and prevent people from getting the next variant or the next new variant after these ones. So I think it's a very, very wise thing to do in our community. So I'd like to make that a motion. And I also would like to, if it's possible, to add to it the communication plan with that motion. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Audrey. So Audrey is moving on the recommendation and is including the piece of what Nathan's alluding to, the fact of the communique plan to our full community on the outcome to the surveillance opportunity. Is there rather a seconder to the motion with that addition? Second by Greg. Are there any further questions or comments in relation to the motion? Sherry Lynn? Sherry Lynn is asking the time frame around the communication plan. So I'll look to possibly Sarah, if is that an opportunity to come back to our next meeting with a communication plan attached if this motion goes through?
When would the next meeting be?
So then, whether it be on general council or the next political liaison, so anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks.
Okay, yep, I can work with Central Comms on a communication plan.
So within the time frame of 2 to 4 weeks. We won't waive second reading. Yeah, you're right. Okay, thank you, Sarah. Is there any further question or comment in relation to the motion? Okay, seeing or hearing none, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Any opposed? 1 opposed. Motion is carried. Okay, so we're going to wait on second reading until full council is privy to that communication plan. So thank you, Sarah and team, for providing the next steps, as well as mover and seconder for looking to the next steps on this motion. Thank you, Mike, as well. Okay, council, so that is the recommendation. Thank you, Sarah and team, Mark as well, who joined the line. The next recommendation is should be within your packages of the CAP team activities from July through till September. So I'll allow council to go through that list, and there's any further questions or comments. Do note I am very pleased to see the amount of activity and the detail to this activity report. I'll look to any further question or comment.
When you're talking about.
The next one.
Oh, there's a lot. Okay.
Kellen?
Am I on the right one now, number 7?
Yes, on the CAP report.
No, I was just reading through it. A lot of it, not all of it, mind you, but a lot of it reminds me of that. That having people roll stuff and things like that, but not all of it is the same.
Right.
And I have a concern with the last therefore. Very last therefore. Where it says,
Therefore, be it resolved that Six Nations.
you know, the liability of the court case. I have a big concern with that. That would have to go to the community, wouldn't it?
So I do apologize. We are still on the CAP report. It's part of it, but yeah, I know, I hear you. It's on 7-1. Yeah, you're still okay, but I do hear your concern in the last your last item in the therefore. I do share that same concern. Is there any further questions or comments? Hazel?
Sorry. I just want to comment on CAP team and what they're proposing here. And being at the great workshop last weekend in Rama, there was some discussion on this very topic. And it led me to believe that if council met with great and all those areas where each one of us has a role to play in some part of these topics, and this is one of them. Like the idea here being that this RKEL research project, and they're asking that this be kept aside to be part of the land claims, to be able to utilize that. And it was mentioned too in the GREDI workshops how the universities help to recommend to Guyana, say, the improvements to that and to develop that whole idea. And the one thing that I was thinking too, that they really need to include the Farmers Association into this, because they're on a road now where they tried very long time to come their food sustainability, but now they're on that path they've kind of gone off on their own. I know the money flows through here, but I think they've had the same purpose as what's mentioned in here. They need to encourage younger people to become farmers, because all of the farmers now in our area are getting older, and they were on an endeavor to try and encourage people. And that's what this is also speaking to as well. So I think this is big, because, you know, on the news, you hear about poverty in terms of famines and stuff like that. And I think we need to be ahead of that game. And if our entire community, along with great council, the farmers and everybody, work together, and this 600 acres that they're talking about, that's a great idea to partner with the University of Guelph, because they're all agriculture. It's all helping to develop, promote. I think it would be a good idea for us to look further into this and to bring together those areas, such as farmers, such as grape. I never realized so much being at that workshop, how everybody has to work together, because people are doing their little thing all over. And if we all came together and worked that way, it would help the whole community a whole lot. So that's what I'm hoping to see with this, and I support this resolution. I'll move on it, actually.
Okay, thank you, Hazel, for your comments as well. As noted, we do have a mover on this motion, so I will look to a seconder at this point for further discussion. Is there a seconder to the motion? Is Melba, you seconding?
Yes.
Okay, second by Melba with a question or comment. Melba, you have the floor, and you can go off of mute.
And fertilizer, and I think we should be into that. I don't know if the rest of you know that or not, but I recently became aware of that. So that's going to be a problem. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Melba, for your comments as well. And again, just before I go over to Audrey, you know, I share the same comments as Hazel. I think, you know, we have to get all the key stakeholders at the table for this. I believe even Nathan at one point had brought this forward as well, in terms of what does the bigger picture look like. I remember this, it reminds me of, I think, year one of pandemic, when the first summer I never seen so many gardens at people's homes, like, you know, that they have built for their own families. So, I mean, I think it's something that we do have to get to a point, you know, as we see the direction in which the globe is heading, it only makes sense to get to this piece of sustainability. Over to you, Audrey.
Thanks, Mark. I'd like to commend the CAP team for the hard work that they're doing. It's wonderful to see this huge list of things that they're working on. And so again, my commendations to them. I think that's a great job. And I do agree with that motion. I do believe that land should be set aside. And I do believe that all of us should be working together. And the farmers have to be an integral part of this. And Guelph University, they have a really great farming program there. In fact, my great nephew is attending that to learn more about farming. I think the more information we can get and back to here, back to the reserve, and that it's going to take time, but I think that you're going to see a lot more people in the food sustainability business here and taking care of their families, but also the community as well. So I'm in agreement. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Audrey. As well, I see a number of hands being raised. And just before I go to the next speaker, you know, I still want to raise concern in relation to the partial payout, which is in relation to Helen's first comments of the last therefore. I still find concern with that area of it being attached to the court case. I think we should still be able to do this work outside of that and what that looks like. So I'm not sure how the council feels on that piece, but I'm sure we'll have a further discussion on that matter. I'm going to go to Sherry Lynn, over to Greg, and then over to Helen. Sherry Lynn, you have the floor.
I just was gonna say, I agree with this. If we can start doing little pilot projects, if it's that, I'm gonna go back to the eggs, the egg farm, I'm still gonna go back to having a butcher, all these things that we talked about, to learning how to sustain ourselves. So somehow, if it's political or whatever, to start pushing to be able to do these pilot projects for the community and have the Guelph University to do like the research and everything else that 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 would agriculture, yes, that would be great. So I would like to see this also, but also pilot projects that we push here at the table to be able to start doing sustaining ourselves and then go further out. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Sherilyn. That makes total sense to me as well for these types of initiatives. I'm going to go just down the speakers list. Greg is next in line, then over to Helen, and then Nathan. Greg, you have the floor.
Yeah, yes, being a new counselor here, I agree too that the Farmers Association should be directly involved with the ARCEL project. But just a question to other counselors: do we have a representative, or have we been representative at the Farmers Association's meetings? And are they kept abreast of what our connection is with other projects like ARCEL, and gives them an opportunity or gives them a voice if we're in agreement with them or even disagreement, that we could bring their views or their relationships forward? I'm not certain where council is on the association with the Farmers Association.
We'll just wait to, let's need to go on mute. Great, perfect. So yes, to answer your question, we have had representatives on the Farmers Association. I think Nathan, correct me if I'm wrong, is still that rep. I know we've been going back and forth on a number of initiatives, but I think it's time to bring them back into the picture as this item is now being brought forward again as recommendation from CAP. So to answer your question, yes, we have had representation. I think it's even more imperative that we get back to the table on this initiative. Helen, and then over to Nathan, and then Hazel. Helen, you have the floor.
Yeah, I think it's a good project. I mean, I like the idea of the project. It's just that, like I said, that last therefore, if we could take that out of there, I would certainly be supportive, but unless, I don't know if Taylor wants to explain what that means or why it's there. Why do we have to have that last sentence there?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Helen. We actually have Lonnie on the line as well, who could perhaps speak to that item. Lonnie, if you can just touch base on the last therefore, as the same concern is being raised.
Yeah, okay. We had talked about, we have this hammer, over Ontario with the court case. And so that's a reflection of getting Ontario to seriously consider anything we're requesting, right? That there's always a way for them to relieve the pressure from the litigation. So it's there as I suppose an adjunct to the motion, but it can be taken out. We can resolve it. We really don't need it there. It's just pressing upon council, in the past, that we have this hold over Ontario because of the litigation, and we should be taking more advantage of it. But it can be taken out. No problem with that.
Okay, thanks, Lonnie. And I think just to your point, I do see, just from your comments on how the thinking behind it of including, but I think it will just even further add a barrier to the initiative of the overall. So I think with the removal of that, it will have obviously, I would assume, more support at this table. So I will come back to the mover and seconder on that specific piece, but at this time I have Nathan in queue for question or comment.
Yeah, thanks. That last piece, because I agreed with Helen, that last piece kind of needed to kind of go. Because I think either way, if it's a strategy, we can bring it back at the appropriate time. Just a reflection on the past work, and if we do pass this motion, I think a very delicate and sensitive communication has to go back to the Farmers Association. They came forward a few years ago with this exact plan, and we said no as a council. So for us to go back and say, oh, you know what, here's another plan led by the university, we agreed with this, and can you come and join? I think that might be seen as a little bit disrespectful. So I think we need to acknowledge the history and that working relationship with the farmers to bring them in. I'm glad we've come for a full circle as a council and seeing the value in this, because we certainly didn't see the value a year and a half ago when the Farmers Association brought this forward. So just that acknowledgement and being honest with ourselves and communicating that out with the Farmers Association, because I think we got a little bit of repairing to do on that relationship. They've continued, and Hazel's right. GREC's part of their plan, their framework for food sovereignty in Six Nations. So now we have two bodies of work, and we don't want them conflicting. So just going to ask that some sensitivities go forward in that communication, because at the end of the day, we want the whole community involved. And maybe a reconsideration of where the farmers are, because they've done an enormous amount of work. And Hazel can probably speak more to it, as they likely did an update at the GREC meeting. So I'm just going to leave my comments there. I'm definitely supportive of this work. Just also cautious about the community sensitivities around it.
Thank you, Nathan. I think, again, you've highlighted some very important pieces to this overall discussion. Maybe even that's an opportunity for us, because as mentioned, it's important that we look at all of our relationships, and one of those obviously being with the Farmers Association. So maybe it's an opportunity for this council to look at not only, with our CAT team and the University of Guelph and so forth, but also bringing in the farmers, as a starting point to say, here, let's schedule this meeting. This is the historical background of the work that has happened, that the farmers have been a part of. This is another opportunity of this same initiative coming back to the table, so that we can really kind of break the barriers between, the CAP team, say, for example, and the University of Guelph with the farmers, so that, again, it starts off in I guess, a more fluid manner, in that again, we can further rebuild relationships as we move forward. Just before I go over to Hazel, I just want to look to Nathan as a follow-up. Maybe he has any follow-up questions or comments.
Yeah, just subsequent, just acknowledging to our own health staff and the work they're doing to pull them in as well. They continue to do pretty good work on it. Kelly Gordon, I think, it's still the lead. So
yes. And again, it's all about eliminating the silos. I think that's something that Hazel has emphasized, in her comments as well, is we need to, in order to make this work and to have the real impact across our entire territory, we need to have everybody at the table. We need to make sure that we're aware of all the work on each party's side. I'm going to go over to Hazel for further comment.
My last comment is I just would like to ask Nathan, are you still on the representative for the Farmers Association name?
Sorry, it was just a question to Nathan. Helen, sorry if I could just get you on mute. Helen? Sorry, thank you. Nathan, just to confirm, Hazel's question was to you in relation to you being the representative still at the Farmers Association.
So council took me off when we started thinking about the governance. But I know through environment, Rod's been in touch with them quite a bit through that process. And they are a part of the environment task force. I can't remember. I don't think a representative have been coming. So that's how we reestablish our connection with the environment.
Okay, that makes total sense. Thanks for that, Nathan. So we'll have to bring, oh, sorry, just if you want to mute. We'll have to bring that back forward, Hazel, for further discussion in terms of a new representative, or if we want to go the same route of maintaining to put Nathan back. I do recall that conversation. Audrey has her hand raised.
Just a last statement that we have to not lose sight of land, because we expect to sustain our whole community. We need a lot of land for farmers and individuals, et cetera, to grow their crops on. Yeah.
Good points, and totally agree with that. Thanks for your comments, Audrey. Is there any further questions or comments? Sherry Lynn.
We're not voting on this now, are we? Because just what Nathan said, I would like to see what they have to say first before I vote for anything. That's just the respect that, so it's up to the table, but I'm going to vote until he talks to the farmers before we vote anything. Just my suggestion.
That's a good suggestion. I think it may also help in relation to the relationship really with the farmers as well. Hazel, further question, comment?
Yeah, I just want to make a comment that Rod Whitlow does attend at the farmers meetings in terms of the fertilizers, etc. And I think they find his help and knowledge in that respect is very helpful to all of them. But I guess when it comes right down to fertilizer, it is what it is. And for the decades that it's been used, but I recall when there was a time when there was not, where you purchase your fertilizer, you'd clean your barn and spread it out onto the land. And that was the way things were fertilized back then. So I just kind of have a hard time with how it used to be and all the new regulations, and you got to do it this way. And it's sort of, I don't know. It worked before. I can see it working again if they want to do away with heavy duty fertilizers. Just go back to the old way of doing it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Hazel, for your comments as well. I think I do just want to look back to the mover and seconder and really go back to Sherry Lynn's suggestion of perhaps maybe in terms of the chronology of how this occurs. I think that just given the Nathan's recollection and background to this issue in the past, I think it might be more beneficial for everybody if we reach out to the farmers first and then bring this item back to maybe have a more wholesome discussion. So I want to just maybe at this point look to the mover and seconder if we can defer this item until and maybe include a new motion where we reach out directly to the farmers and have the necessary parties at that meeting to give an overall background and historical pieces, all of those items to this initiative, and then bring the item back with all parties, hopefully at the table, and then go from there. I'm just looking to any further comments, questions in regards to that for process wise. I see Melba. Melba has the floor.
Yeah, are we saying that the CAP team did not consult with the farmers?
Looking to.
Do we know the answer to that?
We have representatives from the CAP team. So the main goal was to intervene and stop the sale of that property from going private. So the agricultural piece has not been consulted with the farmers at this point. Thanks. I have Carrie next, and then over to Helen, and then Audrey. Carrie, you have the floor.
Yeah, Chief, it's just a comment on a lot of the vacant farmland now is used for tobacco. So all the lots that aren't being used yet are pretty few and far between. So it's just a comment on if we ever get real serious about back in the farming, we'll be looking for property. I mean, farmlands that doesn't have tobacco on it.
And that makes total sense in relation to why we're looking at this even particular property, so that we can look again at expanding this initiative further in terms of the agricultural piece. So do appreciate your comments, Carrie. Helen, you have the floor.
Well, I was just going to say, if there was like a time frame or urgency to this, I think Phil said something about acquiring the land, make sure they don't sell the land first. That's why they're looking at it. So I'm wondering if we shouldn't pass this for the land's sake and then do the rest of the work after, because from the kind of work that I'm hearing you guys want done, that isn't going to happen overnight. It's going to take a while to do all that stuff. So I'm suggesting let's go with this just to try and hang on to that land and then work on the rest of the stuff after.
Thank you so much, Helen. Again, with the comments made from our CAP team, I do agree in terms of the process. So I'll look back to the mover and seconder just in relation to what Phil has alluded to, the fact of intervening for the sake of that sale of land. I think that's an important piece. But again, it looks like we'll have a simultaneously plan happening in the agricultural sector as well in relation to this. Further question, comment over to you, Audrey.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, is that we have to be able to have land, as I mentioned before. And if this is one of the ways that we can make sure that we've got some carved aside, it makes reasonable sense to carve it aside, have it set there. And then our farmers, whoever wants to plant, has land to plant on. And it's like forward thinking. And that communication plan can go hand in hand. The relationship building can go hand in hand with this as well. So that's my motion. I want to keep it that.
That makes total sense. Thank you for that, Audrey. I just want to revisit then back to, again, based on the discussion of Lonnie's earlier comments in relation to the last therefore piece of the partial payout for their liability in the court case. Wondering if that's still opportunity, or if we could look to the mover and seconder of the elimination of that part of the motion.
So I have a question for Phil on that, if I could.
Sure, over to you, Audrey.
Is there any other way of holding onto that land besides the way we're going here with that motion?
No, as Lonnie pointed out, that's just a hammer.
Yep.
We can use that without that being in the motion.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, so is that okay with the mover? Looking to
Didn't Hazel
the
move it? And then Mel seconded it.
looking to the mover and seconder, if that's okay. Yes.
I don't know. I have no problem with this being on there because it's right now it's only an ask anyway, right?
Great, but I think
If we go and do everything else before you can make a decision on that, that land might be sold. So why can't we go with the way it's written here? Because it's flexible, I think, in terms of they're gonna approach our code about it, and
so
you can only hear one or two answers, yes or no.
yeah, so that's already going to continue to happen. So regardless of that part being in the last therefore, that will still happen. What we're suggesting is that because it could come in at any point, that's really putting in the hammer as mentioned, right? So really, if we can get to start on this first, and then if we have to again bring the hammer in of inclusive of that in the partially payment of the court case, then we can. So I guess it's just at this time we're suggesting to remove. Sherilyn.
and to understand that this is just for the land, right? It's not the agriculture, right? That's it. So I'm okay with that, as long as whenever that part comes to speak with the farmers.
And maybe perhaps just to take it a step further, we can look to an additional motion with the inclusion of what you're talking about, Sherry Lynn, of the farmers. Okay, is there any further question or comments? Looks like we do have understanding and approval from the mover and seconder of just taking out that one piece, and we'll look to our CAP team to bring it back as well in the case in relation to the payout of their liability within the court case. Is there any further question or comments? It was a really good discussion. Seeing or hearing none on the screen, I'm going to go to the vote. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion is carried. Motion to waive second reading. Moved by Hazel, seconder. Second by Melba. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion is carried. The next piece I'm just going to suggest, and this is in relation to Sherry Lynn's comments as well as Nathan in relation to the relationship with the farmers. So maybe perhaps we can also look to entertain a motion to set up a meeting with the farmers on this specific initiative with our CAP team and further partners on this initiative to further again look to our relationship. Is that something council is looking to entertain? Moved by Sherry Lynn, second by Greg. Are there any further questions or comments? So we will look to the CAP team to do that outreach as well for further conversation and bring that item back. Looking to the vote, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion is carried, and hopefully we can get this going right away. So motion to waive second reading, moved by Sherry Lynn, seconder. Seconder to waive second, Greg. Within the next, I think, well, so we could still maintain 2 to 4 weeks if that's okay to do some outreach. Yeah, so including the motion of 2 to 4 weeks, it's been moved and seconded to waive second reading. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion is carried. The next piece in which we're doing, this is kind of part of the whole preliminary time period of Gunjukwa. So we do have, so each time counselors are looking, or rather are attending different meetings, including myself. We'll be looking to having meeting reports brought forward to our political liaison agendas. And this is really again to highlight any important discussion points that need to be raised here at council, as well as any further next steps politically in terms of advocacy or reach out, or rather outreach. All of those pieces are really the purpose behind these meeting reports. So council reports, and as we move into hopefully our new governance structure and the way that we look at doing business in terms of efficiencies and so forth, I'll look to councillors Sherry Lynn and Melba just to provide even a verbal update in relation to the BANREP conference that they attended on September 13th through to the 15th, located in Rama. So at this point in time, I'll pass the floor over to Sherry Lynn and Melba just to walk us through any really high level pieces.
Okay. Yeah. So there's about 150 to 200 people. It was for the provincial conference for the BANREP Nations Representatives. That's what it's called. It was 3 days, but overall, they really talked about the new child welfare law now, what communities are being able to do with their own law. Also, OKT did a presentation about the 400 million that's coming to the communities, and for the communities to spend the money and how much ever money you get, even apply again because that money needs to be spent. The other part about it too is there's money coming for prenatal. Not sure when that money's coming, but there will be money coming for prenatal. There's just a couple other things. I think overall, it would be nice for, I think, for the band reps to come and do a presentation to council regarding just certain things like crown wards, those kinds of things that need to understand from a band council perception. That's what I have for that one.
Thank you, Sherilyn. Just looking to Melba, if you would like to add anything further as well, I'll just get you, maybe if you could just hit the mute.
I don't know.
There you go.
Certainly, I don't know the process as to reports because we did receive emails from Turtle Island News and we chose to wait, and hopefully they're listening today where they can hear the reports that we have. So I'm guessing that's going to be the process. Anyway, yes, Crown Wards, that's certainly, as you know, been a concern of mine as well as others. And we've learned that no access is required when you take a review back to court, regardless if there is no access order at the time that Crown Wards became part of CAS. And yes, I think we need more discussion on our own Child Welfare Act, where we've did that in the past, but it's gone by the wayside. We actually did get in the past Child Welfare Act from the US. Dave was instrumental in that because I think he had relatives over in the States at that time. So we need to actually look at that again. We don't want to continue to be in mainstream because we're not mainstream. We're different. We have different culture, language, values, all those kind of things. So the other thing is we need to, as a result of this, Sherilyn and I really wanted to understand and compare the way the band reps represent the band. We need to really put emphasis on that. You represent the band. How many children in care, for example, why they came into care. We know right now that there's a lot of children in care, possibly related to our drug problem. And we also wanted to know, how do they relate to one another? Because as you know, we've had some discussions how protection and prevention relate to each other in regards to our children's care. Not only in the court system, but also in foster care or in with family members. We also learned that there an organization, and I don't remember the community, they're getting 1.2 million to have customary care. And this is not through mainstream. And we've never heard of that from the reports that we've received so far. How do they do that? And I would suggest that we have a presentation by that particular person. I'd have to go to my notes. I don't have them here today. Who that was, and maybe Sherilyn would remember.
That was the one you went to. I didn't go to that one.
Oh, okay. 1.2 million. And it's not through protection or prevention. They do it on their own. That's about all I had to add today. Yeah, but there's quite a few things there that we've learned. So hopefully Turtle Island is listening and will know that we're very concerned how CAS protection and prevention are relating to one another. That's almost the number one, because they need to do that in order to discuss the case and put plans in place for our community people, and if it's court, plans in place together for the court system if our children are apprehended. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Sherry Lynn and Melba, for providing your report from that meeting specifically. And just to give you all a heads up as well, we've been trying from the chief's office as well to really, again, break barriers down within our own community and with, say, OGD and our own band rep program itself. So really looking at areas of concern, gaps, and challenges, but also what is working and what can be fixed. And there needs to be more. And we're working on this with a report to come back to full council to see, here's the list of gaps and challenges that we've recognized. Here's how we're going to fix them in terms of solutions. So that's kind of the way of thinking of how, from the chief's office, well, what we've been trying to do to kind of bridge these programs and to look at, it's our families that we need to make sure are always at the forefront, our children and our kids. And I think that's something that we need to continue to push that message further along. But also, I think that's a really important piece in terms of the protection and prevention piece. It's not versus. We need to look at, again, from a more wholesome view of how this is going to work within community, and in relation to also the funding that's coming down attached with it. That's the most important piece. As we all recognize, we are currently in a housing crisis, for example. That's one area to this whole bigger picture. And I think that's something that if we can creatively, look to the funds that we're going to be receiving to start to build apartment buildings and, sustainable housing, and the list goes on, to help build healthier, stronger families. I mean, again, those are all parts of the bigger picture. So we need to have more, as it's been alluded, a bigger meeting with, again, everyone at the table, so that we can have this more wholesome discussion in terms of, forward thinking and next steps. Exactly. Right. The funding, as Sherilyn has mentioned, a lot of the funding is being used for infrastructure. And I think that's the most important piece as well, as we're looking to get water to our homes, getting out of poverty conditions. Again, the list goes on. So I'm going to further go to Sherilyn.
Can I keep going down the list?
Sure.
All right, so let's go to Native Horizons. I went to Native Horizons Treatment Center. I sit on the board. That was also September 16th, 17th, and 18th. So at the board, we just did the policies, 5-year strategic plan, 5-year budget, the new biz bylaws and stuff there. But I just wanted to state that the building will be done in the middle of January of next year. Starting the program will be in 2023. And it's going to be for 8 weeks. And it's more trauma-based than it was before. And the other part, what else about that? That's about it about that one. So yeah, they've had over 6,500 calls for treatment since it's been burnt. So I'm excited. So in April, that's when the first cycle will be in, 15 beds cycle. So there's that one. Let's move to the gaming. This is the one that I went to Albuquerque. So for the gaming commission, everybody on the gaming commission has the levels. There's level 1, 2, 3 in masters. So that was to get my level 1. I would hope and I would request, or somehow if we can, if council could get the gaming. If we're going to get involved to understand what gaming is all about, we need to understand, because it's Indian gaming. We don't have it here in Canada. That's why it's in the States, the association. So it was about just regulatory act, tribal gaming agencies, the purpose, the rules of games, gaming compacts, compliances, security, everything you could think of in the first level. It was great. So I think at some point, I don't know if it's possible, Chief, that all counselors to be on the same page. We wish it would have had this when I first started on council, to really get this kind of education. And again, level 2, level 3 is in Arizona in November, and level 2 is in Las Vegas. And then the masters will be in the new year, they said. So that's with that one. The next one, let's keep going here. My last one. Patient and Family Advisory Council that I sit on at Hagersville. It was, I think the main one there was, we talked about the complaint process and getting it out to the community, but also too, they did a nursing orientation. There's like the booklet for the ER, but also for the nursing orientation. It was amazing. So I don't know if that happens here or what we can do, but I think that was good to see. For the council is I gave them Dwayne Jacobs' name to get the complaint process. If they have complaints for Hagersville Hospital, to have that info put in there and in the newsletter for what we can do for council. That's all I have, I think. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Sherry Lynn, for walking us through your reports for the meetings attended. Again, there was a few reports within that. So that's in relation to, again, the band rep conference, as well as New Horizons, as well as gaming and the nursing within the Hagersville. So there's a lot happening. Thank you for providing those reports as we move forward. So part of our goal, again, is to highlight some of the political advocacy and the next steps to some of these pieces, as well as obviously bringing the information back to full council. Just to want to comment as well in relation to the gaming file, Sherry Lynn, I know that will be forthcoming to full council as well in terms of our next steps, as we are well aware of our Ontario First Nations Limited Partnership dollars, formerly known as RAMA. We know that we currently receive, again, varies year to year. Obviously, we took a hit within COVID with the closures and so forth. So that full report will be coming back to full council in terms of next steps within that file and where we got to go. I know we talk about own source revenue all the time. And so what does that look like? We need to be continuing to be forward thinking, and with that comes revenues within our community so that we can do these types of initiatives to start to offset things like housing and roads and water lines, and the list goes on. So those are some of our again, I guess, goals and initiatives that we want to look to. And again, do this with our due diligence and eyes wide open. So those pieces will all be coming back in terms of kind of a package of here's the options. Now, how do we want to move forward? So that's something that's going to be forthcoming in relation to that piece. So there's a number of things raised, looking to any further questions, comments to both either Melba and Sherry Lynn. Melba, you have the floor.
Yes, I just wanted to ask Sherry Lynn concerning Native Horizons. Does Six Nations and UCredit have priority in getting into the treatment center?
I think it depends on their application. But again, since it's so close, a lot of our community members don't go. They'll rather go to further treatment centers, Rainbow Lodge, out that way, compared to some do go to Native Horizons for sure. And do they get priority? I think it's just their application. Because there's just different First Nations that sit on this board. So.
Okay, thank you, Melba and Sherry Lynn, for that. Is there any further questions or comments in relation to any of the updates of meetings attended on behalf of Sherry Lynn as well as Melba? I see Hazel has her hand raised, and just to FYI, you'll have to hit your unmute again.
I just wanted to ask, I had attended the GREDI's annual general meeting, and I did a report real quick this morning. Is it okay to add it to this agenda, or do I wait?
No, I think it's okay to add this.
Okay.
Okay, so this.
So just I'll look to add that item as one of our last items for the agenda. But in this at this time, if there's no further questions or comments for Sherry Lynn and her meetings attended, and as well as Melba, I'll look to Michelle to provide her update in relation to her meeting that she attended, and I'll go back to Hazel for you to include on your GREDI update. Michelle, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you. So Trevor Bomberry, the Director of Nation Building, and myself, we had a virtual meeting with the Iroquois Caucus. I'm directly speaking about harvesting rights. So after the power outage, it was actually quite challenging to get on virtually. But we did speak for a couple hours. And the focus of the meeting was how to deal with hunters that approach the Iroquois Caucus for assistance when they're charged with hunting violations. So there was a vast array of suggestions on what should happen. So those discussions will be continuing, and we're looking at doing a summit to educate everybody in all our communities, because some people understand, others don't. So that'll be forthcoming, and the bulk of the afternoon was developing the work plan and budget so that we can put that forward to this week's General Assembly.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much, Michelle, for that update. And again, it's within your packages. Our goal is to, again, have not only, the verbal updates to community, but also for our counselors' sake in terms of written reports. So I know Jill's been working on trying to do one-on-ones with each of you as well to look at, and Melba has alluded to the fact of process for these items. So do agree, and thanks, Michelle. I know this harvesting working group has been in place for some time. Even pre-COVID, there were some challenges at that working group. Six Nations has always been represented at that harvesting working group. I know in the past, former Councillor Carl, as well as Audrey, yes, was on that, and would look to the different items happening at that table. But in terms of as also follow up to that piece, I know just in the case of your written report, Oneida has agreed. I think that was at the last Iroquois Caucus to host this summit, and I think they had to go back to their leadership to confirm if they were still in a position to host that. It's been, I think, a good, working group to be a part of in relation to. I know we've had some of our hunters get into some issues. The last I can recall, which we needed some advocacy work with the FSIN and a couple of our hunters here locally. So that was in Saskatchewan. So again, this work is very important, I think, and all kind of correlates to, what our earlier discussion was as well. So do appreciate your reports as well. Michelle, looking to any questions or comments in relation to Michelle's report? Okay, seeing or hearing none, I'll shift over to Hazel and now at this point to provide update on her report.
Yes, I attended the GREDI's annual general meeting on September 16 and 17. That was my first time going to one of their annual general meetings, and I must say I learned a lot, and you never really realize the amount of work one of our programs or businesses are doing. And their dedication, it came through strong and clear. I can see the passion from the CEO, although one of the, I'm not sure of her position as a CEO, but she was not there. Also, the other council rep was not in attendance. They did go through all of their reports, the ends and sub-ends, their annual board calendar with regard to their auditor, board recruitment, work plans, policy updates, and annual report. And some of the highlights that I wrote down from my own understanding and what was going on there was, I guess it related back to that Arkell Road and was lands that are available there. And they expressed an interest in bringing Lonnie and Taylor into a GREDI board meeting so they could just converse with them and get some answers to some of the questions that they have. And I think that's a really good opportunity. And as far as I know, I think it's scheduled for October the 6th. The next thing, I wrote down Six Nations of the Grand River Elected Council would benefit from having a meeting with Grading and learning what their endeavors are in so far as training and education for Six Nations members. It is imperative that training for Ontario Works recipients would help those people to get into the workforce. But what we learned there is nobody wants to work. It's bad. It's really bad. And I just can't believe it. That was hard for me to understand. I don't know how you interest people in leaving smoke shops, etc., and going into some career development where they have. And one thing that I think that's going to really hurt the people in the end is going to be if you're not building a pension towards your retirement, you're going to be in real trouble. Because if you don't build that pension from the time you're young till you get old, that's all you're going to have is old age pension. You won't have no CPP, you won't have no work pension. And like it's building a community of poor elders. So I don't know, I'm thinking that if council, all of the educational institutes had a joint meeting to discuss a plan of how to interest and recruit and mentor young people, that they have to understand that role of becoming educated, getting interested in a career and building for their future. I tell my children, my grandchildren, that like you really have to get into an area where they are paying pension because, and I tell them what can happen. The next thing is, I was quite amazed about the Guyana Say, which is being built up, and the offers that they get from universities around territory, like Guelph, Waterloo, McMaster, who all want to help them and give them ideas and do some research in terms of the Guyana Say and what they're actually doing down there. So I found that quite interesting. And then I had the experience with agriculture research in the process of moving from their current site, which is 600 acres, and that Six Nations could work with the University of Guelph and field of farming. This would be an excellent opportunity to also assist the Six Nation Farmers Association, who are working on their project to establish a co-op on Six Nations to grow and supply food for the entire community. And what I see too is the young people really need encouragement and help build an interest in farming. I don't know how you begin that. I was born into it, so it came easy for me, but there's something in that, and I think of that co-op, which is going to be built, and their endeavors to have chickens, eggs, beef, pork, all of those will be available for the people of the reserve. The one thing that really kind of threw me and threw a lot of the people in that workshop, or not workshop, but this meeting in Rama was, we were told that Grady had approached Polytech, so they wouldn't be overlapping with their educational and training programs that they have. But Grady was told to do your thing and we'll do ours. Don't matter. But I think there really has to be a relationship of, okay, we'll do this, you do that, and an understanding, so it doesn't leave people feeling that nobody wants to hear your endeavors. I think we need to build each other's endeavors and work with each other, support. And in that effort, then we are helping our community with so many things. And the last thing I was, and what I said down there was a fact that my daughter being so involved in health, and she's in, she works for Health Canada, and she's all over Southern Ontario now with building up the First Nations workstations, etc. And she spoke to this young girl who was working in a smoke shop, and she got her so interested. She enrolled in nurses training. She started in September. Yesterday, I asked her how it was going, and she said it's hard. I said it is hard. Everything is, but don't give up. But that mentorship and the support to young people is so important for them to constantly hear that and let them know that people are pulling for them. And I think we as a council, if we work with all of these entities like GREAT and the educational part of everything, and then do that encouragement for the people, the young people, because that's what they need. So thank you. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Hazel, for providing your update on that meeting as well. I think you've highlighted a lot of important pieces. You know, I think the other piece, just as a young person as well, is the financial literacy. You know, in relation to what you had mentioned in your earlier comments of, you know, pensions and looking to, you know, old age and CPP. I mean, I think a lot of young people don't want to think that they're going to get old one day, but that's inevitable. And I think that's been part of even my own learning curve, is understanding financial literacy and the importance of credit and what that means, and, you know, all of those pieces. And I think, you know, what you've mentioned in relation to the mentorship and the support for young people to help build up further. I mean, I think that's our role as leaders in this community, to help, you know, break the barriers, you know, from organizations, and to be able to really focus in on what is the goal. And the goal is, you know, especially when it comes to, I know we have a lot of educational experts at the table here that can really help facilitate in breaking those barriers, and to really look at the overall goal. And so, you know, I do hear your point, and I've written down, you know, in terms of, you know, setting up a meeting, a joint meeting with all necessary parties, I think is an important piece to, you know, in the step of moving forward, and to really highlight, you know, some of the pieces that you've mentioned in your update and your report. So thank you for those. I'm going to open the floor up to any further questions or comments. I'll first begin with Greg, and then over to Aaron.
Yeah, just to pick up on that, we're really woefully underrepresented in math, science, and engineering. We lack way behind the non-native population in North America. I think there has to be a change in the mindset of young, even young, goes back to young mothers, goes back to preschool, goes back to public school, the importance, and also the fun. I think they take the fun out of science. They take the fun out of math, and even in science, we can even put science in the knowledge of young kids through our ways, through our natural ways. You know, how, for example, just to show someone how an infection develops, all you have to do is hollow out a potato, put syrup in it, put the potato in water. That's called osmotic pressure. That's how an infection will grow. And it's very, very simple to see. And it's fun, but it really has to come down to our younger education curriculum. And I think it's a very difficult problem to solve. We're so far away from it that to bring it back, it could be through professional days where we bring back either students that are in university or professionals or retired professionals, go back into public school and just give a small little experiment and make it fun, and just do it in a very, I would say, informal way. and we could start with preschool and try to get some interest in math and science. Although, because we don't have any representation in engineering. In all this economic development is all engineering. Even the tobacco industry, there's engineering in that. So my recommendation is to bring back the old professional days where you'd bring in people to schools to talk, career days or career fun days or whatever. And my other point is, I think we lack physical education. Now swinging a little bit towards health, but it is part of science, is that a more fit child learns better. He learns quicker, he retains more, his interest rate is a little bit longer if they do more physical activity. When I was in school, at number 4 school, for physical education, we cut wood. The boys cut wood, the girls stacked it up. And we worked up a sweat. But it got us going for the day. But that's a simplified version of just physical activity, allowing children to learn better. But it is a big picture. I don't have the answer. So, but I'm just speaking from my experience of trying to make it fun and trying to get the education curriculum to start bringing in math and science and also these other careers to come into the school and tell them what they are. And all these career people are natives. They're not non-natives. We don't need them. We've got doctors, we've got lawyers, we've got dentists, we've got everybody. But we just have to bring them in occasionally and then if you do this type of career and this type of work, the money comes. People don't realize it. The money comes, and then you learn about retirement and everything. But that's all my comments on that.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Greg. I just want to make sure we're on mute. Yeah. Okay, yeah. So again, you've highlighted the really important pieces, I think, more towards the bigger picture of things. And this is really in partnership as well with our federal schools, right? I think that's another piece that through Hazel's update and recognizing, we have to further build responsible adults. And that starts at a young age. And I think we need to start, to Greg's point, even further, like preschool and what that looks like. So again, I think, this discussion has definitely evolved into more of the educational background pieces and so forth. But I think it's not too far out of reach. I mean, I think we have all the tools in front of us. It's a matter of assembling the way of how we're going to build this. And I think that's something that we need to start to focus on as well. Darren, and then over to Nathan.
Yeah, thanks. And Greg actually made a lot of the same comments I was going to make, just in terms of that gap. You may recall I was participant, or I kind of led a study, a Haudenosaunee labor force study back in 2010. It's sorely needed to be updated. And within that sort of frame, you're able to match what the sort of the career availability is and where we're heading in the future, and match that back with the supply, our labor force, and how we can supply that demand. And not just, not specifically across Canada, but obviously within our own territory. And I think when Hazel was giving her update about GREAT and bringing in Lonnie and the team, I think that's another key piece, because with the CAP team, not just all the activities that they're doing, but what happens when we have lands returned to us, whether it's agriculture, whether it's commercial development, whether it's planning and all of those elements. There's so much there. The engineering, as Greg spoke to, those pieces. I mean, if we can paint the picture of Six Nations 2050, that will excite people, I think. So I think that those are just, again, a lot of strategy around that. I just want to put just maybe a period on this, Chief, and we spoke about this at our check-in, about a think tank. I'm going to reach out with all the CEOs, the EDs of the organizations and agencies across the territory, and basically pull everyone together. It kind of the idea of breaking down the silos, but looking at the big picture. looking at what our human capital has and where we need to get to, and the strategies to support that. And really, that's just serving the community plan with everything that's within the community plan. The environment is another big area. So where we have a bit of a gap, we've got some good people, but we need more. So I'll just stop there. I think Greg covered a lot of what I was going to say. So, but there are some things we can work with Greg and others, our partners in the community. And that's something that's definitely, I guess I get excited about that because we can't do it all ourselves. We have to involve them and other agencies in the community. Yeah.
Thanks, Darren. I totally agree, with your points, especially around the last point of the think tank initiative that we're looking to host, and again, bring in. And it's not saying that everyone is working separately. I don't want to paint that picture as well, but I think there are gaps and challenges within where people can be working more effectively and better for the common goal. So that's definitely highlighted. Nathan.
Darren covered off kind of a lot of the pieces because I'm a big advocate of pulling everyone together to break down the silos. And you're right, Chief. I think it's more of a gaps analysis in that work that they need to do. Also refreshing to hear Greg's comments. I agree entirely. And it's where we need to land as a council, right? Because I've been witnessing the last year and a half, and then when it comes to human resources, we've been hitting a wall as a council without getting beyond some of these pieces that we need to think outside the box. So when I hear, outside the box thinking, I'm going to gravitate to it because I agree entirely that we need to get beyond just, highlighting what the issues are without getting past those issues and finding the solutions. The think tank is going to be very vital to, and if not, maybe one of the more important initiatives we are doing because it's not about, I heard from Great that people don't want to work. Let's reverse that wording to say we need to invest more in our workforce. Yes, people want to work, but are we investing enough from the council table? Are we investing enough from the Great table? Are we investing enough from, the businesses that are within here? And are we tapping into the businesses? I think it's going to be important for us to not only hold these think tanks and host them, but look at how best we can invest. Because we invested heavily in education, I would say. As a council, but we necessarily haven't translated that into real opportunities going forward. And the final point, I really like Greg's point on bringing in professionals. I'm seeing on social media, we bring in athletes, bringing in the Ticats, and that's great. I think we need to continue that. But it is going to be necessary for us to make it far more attractive for folks to go into the math and sciences, and also to bring in the Indigenous people that are doing that great work too across the country, because we have them as well. Just a reminder, we have an economist from our own community at Harvard doing extraordinary work. To be an economist, you have to be good in math. So let's highlight that going forward, and she can make it exciting. On a lot of ways. I've heard her speak. She's not boring in terms of the innovation and what she's doing there as well. So just a couple of things to underscore, but it is refreshing to get to this point in the conversation.
Thank you, Nathan, for your comments as well. And I do have to attest to your last comment with the individuals and bringing in, our educational experts and lived experiences. I think that's so important and goes a long way with our young people. Again, I can attest to my time, even at the very small time at Harvard at the executive program, and she's not, you're right, she's not boring at all. She's very intriguing and really, gets your attention in terms of, some of these topics of discussion and so forth. So do appreciate all of those items. I do see Audrey has her hand raised. Audrey, you have the floor.
Yeah, it's wonderful to hear all this generated talk and discussion. I think it's great. But I think one of the foremost partners in all of this is lifelong learning. We've been working at this now for the last 6-7 years and have compiled a lot of information, done a lot of surveys, have done a lot of social media, and everybody is saying the same thing. We need to improve our education system, and it needs to be built and based on our language and our culture. And we need to do for us. There was a time when we had over 80% of our teachers were from Six Nations. That has changed. So we want to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to be able to speak their language of choice. So there's a lot of building that goes into that. And I guess we'll just keep updating you at our lifelong learning meetings when we have them. And if you can go online, check into it. There's lots of information there for you. There's lots of videos, there's surveys, there's recommendations that'll be coming out as well. So we'll need all of council working with us on this. And also the political, Christopher is on our committee as well. And we need that political advocacy going in, and we need to start working on that now and building that of what it is exactly we're looking for. The federal government is responsible for our education, and we will not be taking it over unless there's enough funding to meet the needs of Six Nations students and adults. So that has to be there. And we're working at it diligently, but we need to get more and more people involved. So now.
Okay, thank you, Audrey, for your comments. And as you have seen, these reports or updates evolve into bigger discussions and so forth. And so we'll definitely look at the pieces of, as you've highlighted, Audrey, in terms of the next steps on the bigger picture items, but some of these smaller steps that we can take as well in terms of, where do we go from this point? Sorry, Melba, and then over to Hazel.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to say concerning Hazel's information that I'm very, very surprised that, and I'm sure there must be a lack of understanding concerning, the do your own thing and we'll do ours. I would think that Polytech has been in place for many years, and that's not usually how they operate. As you can see, over the years, they've had many graduates and are open to listening to the community, just as council is open to listening to the community. Yeah, so I just wanted to say that I'm sure that can be straightened out, and I'm sure they'll be willing to meet to discuss the future of our community in many ways that are necessary. Audrey, I don't know if Audrey had anything to say also about Polytech. She's represents. I'm a community member and Audrey represents council.
Thank you, Melba, for your comments as well. And I think that's what, when we talk about the relationships, it's about further building relationships within community as opposed to, staying further apart. Because I think when we talk about these pieces, we all have common goals. And I think that's what it's always been about is, how we can further that common goal. So do appreciate your comments. Over to you, Hazel.
Yes, I just want to ask, I guess, because I don't know myself how to address this. I know, Audrey, with the lifelong learning, like you can bring any educational topic to the table. How do you address, and this was what happened last weekend, where this little guy was opening up his birthday cards. And somebody says, read the card, like, who's it from? And I think he's in grade 7. And he put it down and he says, I don't know how to read cursive writing. I thought, oh no, that's the impact of taking out cursive writing out of the schools, right? Why did that happen? And can you just put it back in on reserve so the kids will know that? I don't know if you have the answer, Audrey. I'm just wondering.
Okay, I'll look to further Audrey's comments, and we'll look to draw this discussion to a close. Audrey.
I'll just go back to Melba's first. All the agencies that you're talking about, anybody that deals with education is on lifelong learning. Polytech is there, Gripsio is there, GREAT is there. So everybody is working together. We have the same goal, and that is to make sure that education, all groups work together. So whether they are or not right now, but that is the goal for us. We want to make sure that everybody with their gifts finds their gifts of these students, and we augment them, and we make sure that people are successful. And also making sure they get their language and their culture. Along with this one, Hazel, that you're talking about with the not being able to read cursive. Yeah, they did remove it several years ago, and the printing as well. But teachers can teach printing. They can teach cursive. It just means you have to carve out that time. But it probably should be bettered off as a system so that we do that. And it would only take 10, 15 minutes every day to teach kids how, and they are doing that now. They are teaching them how to print. There's one program called Handwriting Without Tears that is very popular to use and teach kids the correct strokes they make, so that when you get to grade 3, then those strokes turn the ends up and it becomes cursive writing. So those programs are available now. And I have seen printing and cursive writing being taught, but not like it was 50 years ago. It's kind of different, and but nothing says it can't go back in and be a systemic thing for us. So now for asking questions.
Okay, well, thank you. Thanks, Audrey, for your response to that question. Again, the whole goal behind political liaison is these types of discussions that evolve out of reports from these meetings that we all attend and so forth. And really the goal is to not only to have a discussion, but then to come up with what are now the action that needs to take place and the next steps that need to happen to further our political advocacy work, as well as even just our internal community work. So there's a lot, I think, even just in relation to the last little bit of conversation of, cursive writing, bringing back possibly maybe even home ec and tech and all those other pieces of classes that I know even myself learned a lot more in grades 7 and 8 home ec than I do know how to cook today. But again, at the end of the day, I think those are the types of discussion points that Audrey's alluded to in the work that's happening with the lifelong learning, to then develop what it looks like for this type of system and to be built upon what our needs are as a people and community. Obviously highlighting the importance of language and culture and making sure that that's in it every step of the way as well. So there's a lot of things happening. There's things that are going to continue to happen, but I think I do appreciate the process of these discussions that are coming to the table. Just out of these meeting reports and updates, I think is an important piece of how we as a community, council, and then community stay informed. But again, I think highlighting the next step in terms of what do we do from this point and how do we fix certain things. So do appreciate each of your reports for bringing them forward. I will in the future look to accepting of each individual one, but as we are working for today, I'll look for a motion to accept Councillor Sherry Lynn, Councillor Melba, as well as Councillor Michelle and Councillor Hazel's reports all in one motion, if that's okay. I have a mover on the floor, moved by Audrey, second by Helen. And are there any further or final questions or comments to any of the reports that were provided? Okay, seeing or hearing none, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion is carried. So just a FYI again, as we move forward with these reports forthcoming, there is a tab at the last of the report, which is recommended items for political action. So those will be some of the highlighted pieces that we'll be looking towards as we move forward here. That does complete our agenda for political liaison. And again, want to say thank you and yawa to each of you for joining us this morning. And at this point in time, I will look for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Sherry Lynn, second by Michelle. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion is carried. We had a little rough start here to political liaison with our technology, but nonetheless has come around quite smoothly. So thank you now to each of you for joining and look forward to seeing you on our next meeting, which I believe is tomorrow, General Council. Thank you, everybody, and have a great day.